Almost ready. What up, what up? How's it going out there? Enjoying your Saturday? Hopefully. What should we do? What should we do? I've been watching a bunch of Trey the Explainer stuff. He's very detailed. I like this reptilian one. Maybe we should watch that one again. Get some things queued. We'll keep him up too, just in case. Oh, this is a banger. There's not much. Any suggestions? Nah. Alright, well, I'll make the choice. Wait for this this banger to come to a little bit of a close, so I don't want to ruin it. Alright, that's a little bit enough of that. Now, let's learn about the reptilians.
George Bush, Justin Bieber, Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, every Chinese emperor, Queen Elizabeth, Mark Zuckerberg. What do all these people have in common? Well, all of them hide a dark and cold secret just beneath their artificial skins. According to 4% of Americans, that is.
Explain yourself.
In 2013, public polling revealed that a small but not entirely negligible portion of the United States population subscribed to the idea that a race of shape-shifting lizard people control our world by taking on human form and gaining power. By comparison, the same poll found that 7% of respondents believed the moon landing was fake, and 5% claimed the Beatles member Paul McCartney died in 1966.
Do you believe the moon landing was fake, dude? I hope not. I mean, unless you know more than I do.
And was secretly replaced with a body double. Ever since around the early 2000s, there has been this idea floating around in our popular consciousness that a collection of famous people, from our political leaders to celebrities, are secretly reptile-like aliens disguised as humans. These mysterious beings from another planet have been delicately influencing us throughout our distant and not so distant past for malicious purposes.
Oh, shoot me now.
They control the government and popular culture. telling us what to think
In a video
and what to
game.
do.
We could be a food source.
Admittedly, it is one of the more absurd and nutty conspiracies out there, and
Absolutely.
for most people it has rightfully become a sort of widespread joke. However, for others, it is no joke at all. There are people who emphatically believe in this conspiracy, often citing evidence from history, cultural mythology, and archaeology that supposedly supports its existence. Where does this reptilian conspiracy come from, exactly? What is the alleged evidence held up in its defense?
The
And why are the
Nagas?
people who actually believe in it? To answer
like
these questions,
Asia,
I have a
East
special
Asia,
guest
I think?
joining us today, Dr. David Miano from the World of Antiquity
Maybe?
channel.
Hi Trey, thanks for having me.
Thanks to World of
I am,
Warcraft for that
excited to be
knowledge.
Talking about reptilians with you, it's gonna be fun. I'll offer my observations as they come up.
This dude looks
Let's
like...
get into it.
Wait,
So
wait,
sit
wait.
back.
That dude looks like Bill Nye and Tim the Toolman Taylor.
Why are there people who actually believe in it? To answer these questions, I have a special guest joining us today, Dr. David Miano from the World of Antiquity.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, the
So
boy.
sit back and enjoy this installment of Behind the Conspiracy, Reptilians.
Let me keep the multi-stream one up too, just in case.
Despite the
I
claims
doubt
of many of its proponents,
many
the idea of
YouTube chatters will be
reptilians
alive,
is
but-
relatively young. It appears that we only need to go back a little under 100 years to see its origins. This specific origin story is often mentioned in various pieces of reptilian media. As the story goes, on January 29, 1934, the Los Angeles Times newspaper reported that an engineer by the name of George Warren Shufelt had conducted a mining survey beneath the city of LA, specifically under Fort Moore Hill. Shufelt claimed to have discovered, with the help of a so-called radio X-ray machine, a complex labyrinth of underground tunnels and catacombs. His
Okay,
X-ray
so I was
pictures
off.
revealed rooms of solid gold and massive subterranean
That's not even how the ground radar
passages,
works. You would
going
not
as
be
deep
able to
as 100
fucking
feet
see
below
that.
the surface. And according to him, this intricate network formed the shape of a lizard. After consulting with a Hopi Indian by the name of Little
course
Chief
it did.
Greenleaf, Shufelt concluded that the tunnels were in fact something out of an old Hopi legend, the remains of a vast underground city built 5,000 years ago. Not by humans, but by the lizard people. According to Chief Greenleaf, there was once 3 such cities along the Pacific coast of North America, constructed in order to escape some kind of great fiery cataclysm.
San Francisco,
1,000
San
families of
Diego,
these
and
lizard people
Los
dwelled beneath
Angeles.
the earth, keeping records on gold tablets. This ancient race was also incredibly intelligent. The intellectual accomplishments of their 9-year-old children were equal with those of present-day college graduates.
So nothing much has changed between 9-year-old children and college graduates today.
We are told that all of Schufelt's attempts to excavate this forgotten
I
city
just talked shit on
beneath the
myself
city
too.
were unsuccessful to say the least.
Whatever.
We will talk about this more in depth later, but according to most retellings, funding on his project dried up, and his findings never saw the light of day. The ruins of the
The
lizard people and
puns.
their dozens of gold treasures are allegedly still down there in the dark, just beneath the bustling streets and sidewalks of America's second largest city. From Schufelt's original discovery, we see the emergence of several similar conspiracies. Soon after, in the 1940s, occultist and writer Maurice Doreal wrote a little-known pamphlet entitled Mysteries of the Gobi, where he describes a serpent race with bodies
Doreal.
like man, but heads like a great snake. These snake men had the ability to take human form, in an unspecified prehistoric
I mean, I feel like the fact he was a cult leader says something.
era, they engaged in a violent war with humans and were driven to near extinction. Where Doreal got this information is anyone's guess. In the 1990s, Doreal's writings would later influence conspiracy theorist David Icke.
Hell yeah.
Icke's writings are
He's
a whole
the
nother
man.
story, but essentially just expanded on these original concepts that a race of ancient lizard-like creatures,
Although he's
whether
kind of
they're
racist.
live underground
It's
in
a little
bases
weird.
throughout the world, and have disguised themselves as influential humans.
I think so, at least.
Mainly royal bloodlines in wealthy dynasties, the Bush family, the British royal family, and the Rothschilds, etc. These creatures secretly feasted on human flesh
Look
or
at that.
had some
It's
other
like he's
malicious
used to
purpose
putting
in
on
mind for
human
us. Icke's
skin.
influence took these relatively unknown ideas to the mainstream,
Oh
and as a
god.
result, the conspiracy of the reptilians, or reptoids, took on a new life and resonated particularly well among right-wing conspiracy theorists. It is claimed
The
that
best
humans
kind,
for
dude.
thousands of years have been encountering these beings.
Except whenever it comes
and
to the
evidence of these
JC shit.
interactions have been preserved in the artwork and stories of ancient humans. In the wake of this surge, believers searched the past for corroborating evidence. Ancient Aliens featured several of
Looks
these
like
in
a
our
lizard.
episode, and I will give a brief overview of them before we take a closer look. One of the most common examples used to prove the existence of reptilians are these mysterious figurines from Neolithic Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq. They are one of the few pieces of physical evidence, tangible artifacts, used by proponents. Archaeologists know them as the Ubayyad lizard people figurines, excavated from several Mesopotamian sites such as the prehistoric cities of Ur
Oops.
and Eridu. The clay statuettes are all dated to the Ubayyad period of the region, and depict humanoids with thin and elongated bodies, coffee bean-shaped eyes, and pinched noses that give their faces an overall reptilian-like appearance. Ancient Aliens posits that they are too realistic to depict mythological or fantasy creatures,
Stupid
and are in fact based on the real deal, living, breathing lizard men and women encountered by our early ancestors. In addition to these figurines, reptilian proponents use a wide variation of mythological stories and religious texts from cultures around the world to suggest they are all talking about the same thing. Several cultures mention reptile gods or powerful snake-like beings. As we mentioned before, Shufelt believed that the Hopi tribe of North America had one such story. Ancient Aliens primarily focuses on the Hebrew Bible. They claim that the Bible references the existence of a
best
serpent
at it.
race called the Sephirim.
They could
According
just
to
take
them, a
anything and
snake
just
or Nahash in the Garden of
put it
Eden
into like
was just one of a race, and
Like
was
some sort of,
completely human prior to
Christianity
God
terms.
punishing it for tempting Eve in the garden. South Asian mythology mentions the Nagas.
The
Ancient
Nagas.
Aliens defines them as a semi-divine race of serpent people, with the well
Yeah.
of Sashana serving as the entrance to the underground city of the Nagas.
I don't know about
named
that.
Katala. The Jinn in Islam and the feathered serpent gods of Mesoamerica are also viewed as lizard men too. I could go on, but
According to legend, Alexander the Great was sired by a dragon.
all of this is
Hell
to say that
yeah.
according to these conspiracy theorists, many different regions around the world share unmistakable similarities that lend credence to the idea that humans have been interacting with a race of advanced subterranean reptile humanoids pretty regularly throughout history,
Dun,
from
dun,
at least
dun.
the Neolithic until relatively recent times, Hellenistic periods, and so on. Now, this is a lot to unpack. At its surface, I'm so sorry. I know I really need to stop doing that. The evidence for the reptilian conspiracy may seem a tad bit compelling,
Yeah,
but this
so
is only
that's way
because
too
of the
soon.
way books and TV shows like Ancient Aliens have phrased and presented these examples. In reality, the reptilian conspiracy is built on nothing more than blatant lies and misinformation. Let's break it down.
How dare they?
Let's start with that lost city of
Yeah,
the lizard
fuck
people.
this shit. This
Warren
is
G.
bullshit
Shufelt claimed
100%,
to have
I know
discovered
it.
Under Los Angeles, as this story seemingly jump-started the whole conspiracy in the first place. The account as told in the original LA Times newspaper, and how many have since retold it, is misleading, if not entirely wrong, as it leaves out many crucial details. For example, you might be asking, if these catacombs exist, why are there no pictures taken of them or of the supposed gold tablets? Well, it's because the whole story is itself a bunch of bunk. All the
Fucking knew
claims
it.
of Shufelt told to the
Goddamn
press
lying
were completely
bitch.
unsubstantiated, as he never presented any kind of physical proof to back himself up. Not a single tablet or engraved stone,
Those claims are way too fucking broad.
not even pictures taken inside the tunnels. The radio X-ray device Shufelt claimed to have used to find the site in the first place was nothing more than a glorified dowsing rod when looked at closer, as it had nothing to do with either radio waves or X-rays. As many of you might have guessed, George Warren Shufelt was not the most trustworthy of individuals. If one looks back at the records, he had a long history of pulling publicity stunts just like this. According to the newspaper records, would-be treasure seekers have been looking for gold beneath LA's Fort Moore Hill ever since the late 1890s, long before Shufelt even started. All of them turned up empty. A couple decades later, on March 4th, 1933, a very familiar name appears in an edition of the LA Times, almost an entire year before that very same newspaper would run the Lizard People story. Wait a minute. Our old friend Schufelt and a group of men had decided to pick up where the 1890s gold hunters left off, and began excavating Fortmore Hill. Oh, not for reptilian gold, but conquistador gold. According to him, in his possession was an ancient sheepskin map, indicating that Spanish treasure had been buried under the hill over 100 years ago. Hundreds of gold doubloons were just waiting to be dug up. In this version of events, we get no mention of the fabled lizard people. Warren Schufelt's adventures are subsequently detailed pretty extensively in the LA Times that year from March to April. His team repeatedly petitioned the LA Board of Supervisors for extensions in funding on their project, with the intent of splitting the treasure with the city once it was discovered. They would consistently claim they were just about to unearth their goal, if only they had a little more time. By September of 1933, however, Schufelt and all but one of his original team officially gave up the search. It's not that the project ran out of money, it's that it just found nothing, and the LA Board of Supervisors had begun to suspect that they were being duped. Even at the time, few believed that
Hitachi?
Hello there guys, and welcome back to another installment of Trey the Explainer. And today, I'll be discussing, examining, and breaking down a mysterious and obscure event in history for you guys. The curious case of the Itsuro Bune, or Itsuro Fune, or the Hollow Ship incident in 19th century Japan, held up by many as strong evidence of extraterrestrial visitation in our not-so-distant past. It's an odd and slightly creepy story, and I'm guessing not a lot of you guys have even heard of this thing, so, without further ado, the episode. Also, get ready for probably a ton of mispronunciations. Sorry, I tried my best.
Yeah, all the time. I get it frequently.
The image of the flying saucer, thin gravity-defying metal frisbees appear extremely commonly in pop culture, particularly in America. Ever since the 1930s, for some reason,
see me
we
with
as a
my hair
culture
down.
come to accept that little green men, aliens, if they do exist, ride around in these curious devices, famously referred to by the United States Air Force in 1952 as unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. From everything to comic books and cartoons to major films, these flying discs are a staple in alien depictions in art. Why we have come to assume such a thing about extraterrestrials, seemingly on little factual basis, is perhaps something best saved for another day. However, this assumption has led some people to search for notable events in history involving disc-shaped craft and re-examining them to suggest possible alien contact over the centuries. For instance, many medieval and Renaissance paintings are claimed by ancient astronaut theorists to have UFOs and flying saucers hidden in the margins or in the clouds. Art historians, however, have so far shown these assumptions to be false and misguided. For example, this 1350 fresco in a Serbian monastery is an artistic depiction of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Ancient Aliens claims the two objects in the sky to his right and to his left are alien spacecraft or UFOs. But as it turns out, they are merely a stylized representation of the sun and moon motif common in artwork of this scene. The moon and sun are simply being personified as human beings in the same way we often give them human faces in
How would I
artwork
have
today.
not known that?
Similar results have been shown to be true about other claimed UFOs in old art and stories. This recontextualizing of historic events and works, mostly done by ancient aliens, has led us to the descriptions of a strange craft recorded in 3 books written in the Tokugawa period of Japan. By around the mid-1800s, a very bizarre story based on old tabloid-like news stories began to circulate amongst Japanese folktale writers and novelists. All of them seeming to agree in telling of an event observed in a Japanese fishing village in the Hitachi province in the year 1803. The first of these appeared in one of the works of the famous Tokugawa novelist Kyokuei Bakken in his Tales from the Rabbit Garden, published in 1825, which was followed by similar variants of seemingly the same story from other authors, one appearing in The Diaries and Stories of Castaways, written in 1835 by an unknown author, and The Dust
I feel like
of
I've heard that
Apricot,
guy's name before.
written by Nagahashi Madajiro in 1844. Original texts of all three books thankfully have survived the years in both public and private libraries. Bakken's tale appears to be the
Bakken
oldest
guy,
and
yeah.
most detailed record of the original news story.
Maybe Joe Rogan
described
mentioned
in
it
his
before or some shit.
1825 book as a story titled Itsurafune no Banjo, or A Foreign Woman in the Hollow Boat. As the story goes, it was February 22nd in the spring of 1803, offshore from a beach under the territory of Ogasawara Ichiwo no Kami. A kind of boat was observed by local fishermen. Concerned, the fishermen got in their small boats and retrieved and towed the craft to shore. Upon closer inspection, it was very, very weird, to say the least. It was round and resembled a type of box used to burn incense in. I'm guessing it looked something like this, as well as a wooden rice pit. It was around 3 meters tall and almost 6 meters in diameter. It was split into two separate sections, a top and a bottom. The upper part of the boat was made of red-coated rosewood. The bottom was reinforced by iron or brazen metal plates set to protect the wooden hull from sharp rocks. The upper section possessed several shoji, screened windows composed of some kind of glass or crystal and waterproof with pine tree gum or resin. These windows were transparent and allowed the fishermen to look inside the vessel, which was hollow, hence the name. Inside they could see the boat contained bedsheets or carpet, a cake-like food, kneaded meat, and several liters of water in a bottle.
So someone was
Foreign
trying to
symbols
run away
or
from home or
characters
some
in
shit.
a language not recognized by the fishermen decorated the inner walls of the ship. The author notes the characters resembled those seen on a British ship recently arrived in Japan. However, most importantly and shockingly, the boat contained a lone passenger, a young woman between the ages of 18 and 20. She was said to have been 1.5 meters or just shy of 5 feet tall, and very, very beautiful, and very outlandish. Her skin was very pale, a pinkish white. She had red hair and eyebrows, and oddly added to her original red hair was long white hair, either changed to white using a powder or as some kind of fur extension, the style of which was not known to the Japanese people. The author takes care to note Japanese explorers in Russia have noted similar-looking hair in women of their culture. Let us call her Hollow Boat Chan. She wore very long and smooth clothes of unknown fabrics. When she exited the vessel, the fishermen attempted to speak to her, but she spoke a
Hollow
language
Boat Chan.
unknown to them, and they were not able to communicate or determine where she had come from. She was apparently friendly and peaceful, but acted strange as she clutched a small square box which she held constantly and prevented anyone from touching or opening.
Pandora's box?
According to the story, an old villager, whose name is lost to us, extrapolated that this woman may be a daughter of a king in a foreign country. She loved another man after marriage, and her lover was put to death. She had been forced to be put in this
she was a
boat and was left
castaway.
to the sea to be trusted to fate. Her lover's severed head is inside the square box, and this is why she was not willing to let anyone hold it. Allegedly, the old man claimed that this occurred in the past, and similar boats with similar women inside drifted ashore on other Japanese
Alright,
beaches.
now that fuck
Since
that
there
old
is
man,
a precedent
he's
for
telling
casting
some
this kind of
tales.
boat back out to sea, we had better put her inside the boat and send her away. This treatment would be her destiny.
Oh shit, so they just
The
put her
foreign woman
back.
in the hollow boat had been pushed
no!
back to the sea and never
Oh
seen
no,
again.
that poor woman. If she was
The author
real.
then theorizes that the woman may have been a British, Bengali, or, wait for it, American princess, though no one knows exactly. He includes illustrations of the boat and the woman based on people at the time of the incident, though he is somewhat disappointed because the illustrations and sentences are not consistent.
Why would they
Account
fucking
ends
put
with
it
author
back?
asking, if anyone
I
knows
mean,
anything concerning this
I don't know,
event,
like
please
my
let me know.
curiosity is just like going
The
wild. I'd be like, I don't
1844
know.
and 1835
Try to-
versions
try
of the
to
tale
talk
are
to
shorter,
her,
but the
something.
details remain generally the same. Though one differs slightly from Bakken's account, instead setting the event in March 24th, 1803, rather than in February, among other differences that will be addressed later. Analysis. So what are we to make of this story of a strange woman and her bowl-like craft? Was she, as ancient astronaut theorists claim, an alien visitor in a flying saucer coming to visit human beings?
No.
Well, probably not. First of all, as strange as this story may seem, we should dismiss the claim that this craft was a UFO, and this woman an alien. The hollow ship appears to have been just that, a hollow seafaring boat. The hollow ship never flies, or levitates, or even moves by itself in the ocean. It merely drifts aimlessly. Additionally, the ship was mostly made of wood, the only evidence of any other metallic being the reinforced iron plates in the hull. A wooden, low-tech spaceship sounds a little ridiculous. Numerous historians have since pointed out that the hollow ship in fact wasn't anything too out of the technological limits of the time. Circular-shaped wooden boats were definitely nothing unique in Japan for thousands of years. Similar-looking boats were abundant throughout history. The only details about the vessel that are out of the ordinary were the Western-style glass-pane windows and metal plates incorporated into the more familiar Japanese boat design. No, it seems the UFO or flying saucer connection is mistaken, with the mysterious woman's ship only vaguely resembling the shape of the disc allegedly flown by aliens. It seems unlikely and ridiculous to suggest the woman was an alien in the extraterrestrial science fiction sense of the word. No. It seems far more likely
she was
if
an
this
alien,
event occurred at all. The woman was simply a foreigner, a non-native Japanese visitor to the island nation, possibly from Russia or America. The original telling of the story in 1825 even favored this explanation.
Sounds like something Russians would do.
The characteristically white European appearance of the young woman, ginger hair, and Western-looking clothing seems to support this.
You whore!
The strange white
Cast
hair
away!
extensions the woman possessed even matches the limited knowledge of the outside world.
I feel like that's what they would do in
native
history.
Japanese had at the time. Eyewitnesses agree that she was an alien, but not that kind of alien. She was a Western of white European appearance.
So, alien to them.
It is important to take note of the larger historical context of this alleged event. The Tokugawa or Edo period was best characterized by the nation's extreme isolation. During this time, the rulers of Japan closed the country to the outside world and created a locked state, no one in and no one out, except for maybe the Dutch, but they were only limited to this port. The world beyond Japan, to the average citizen, became mysterious, elusive, exotic, and maybe even a little frightening. Westerners like the British, Russians, and Americas, with their black ships and odd physical features, were held in equal parts fear and fascination. A white person would have been a rare and scary sight indeed for a rural fisherman, probably along the lines of seeing an alien today, now that I think about it. Due to the closed borders, information of other countries was incredibly scant and often wrong, hence the idea held by Bakken that America had princesses and kings. It would only be around 50 years after the hollow ship incident that this isolation would be forcefully broken by American Commodore Matthew Perry. Living in such a society, one can see why the hollow ship incident might have caused such a stir. It seems possible that simply some random female adventurer from Russia or America could be to blame for this supposed mysterious incident, but even so, the story has other problems. The story is likely fake.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
The hollow ship story has been examined and dissected by numerous historians who have poked many holes in the story's credibility. The exact location of the event is much contested. The details in both the 1825 and 1844 versions are unmistakably contradictory. Nonetheless,
doesn't seem like a small boat like that would be able to make it that far.
The beach described as Haratonohama or Harayodori would have rested on the Pacific Ocean on the eastern border of the Hitachi state. The 1825 telling says that this particular stretch of beach, where the woman was brought to shore, was owned by Ogasawara Ichuno no Kami, while the 1844 claims the beach belonged to Ogasawara Izumi, relatives of the same family but unmistakably different individuals. Tokugawa government records are quite reliable and detailed, as most historians agree, so we should be able to look for evidence to confirm this information, and see which one is right. Cross-confirming these names with historical government records of the period reveals something interesting. As it turns out, Izumi had no territory in the Hitachi state in 1803, or any other period, while his relative Ichino no Kami did have holdings, 3 territories, in the Hitachi state in 1803, so it appears the 1844 telling is likely mistaken. But it gets a little weirder. The 3 territories he owned in 1803 are not on the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, not on the beach.
They're inland.
Okay.
meaning they have no beaches for a woman to wash up on.
So that doesn't make sense
Digging
either.
deeper reveals that no beach or place by the names given appear on any geological map of the Hitachi state in the Tokugawa period.
Isn't this
or
every
after
rabbit
it.
hole?
It is even absent in the
Some
famous and
asshole just
incredibly
made it
detailed
up.
Japanese Geographical Dictionary released in 1907. The lack of evidence to corroborate the story's location leads to the most likely conclusion being that the named beaches are imaginary, a fictional location made up by someone, most likely the authors. Furthermore, the late Tokugawa government was by no means bad at recording illegal breakings of its borders. We find absolutely no contemporary mention of such a landing in government records, which is odd, as almost always such contacts with outsiders would be recorded. For instance, in 1824, just a mere 20 years after, 2 British whaling ships arrived in Otsuhama, in the Hitachi state, and this incident can be found in an official Tokugawa document that belonged to the shogunate, and survives for us to read. This location of
God,
Otsuhama
dog.
was and is a real location, and can be easily found in geographical maps of the era. It is ridiculous to believe that such details of such importance could have vanished entirely so quickly and rapidly. Hitachi is also incredibly close to Edo, the capital, so hiding such a landing seems unlikely. No, it seems that the event was completely made up. The authors of the 3 books appear to have cleverly crafted locations and persons both real and imaginary together to lend credibility to the story, making it difficult for investigators to outright disprove or verify the stories, a common tactic of April Fool's jokes. Other aspects of the books stinks of fabrication. The old man recorded in Bakin's story seems to be an obvious made-up character. The theorizing, intelligent, nondescript old man does not appear in other accounts, and his huge tangent and extrapolation on the woman's origins seems like a self-insert by Bakin himself. As if we need any more proof, the Hollow Ship story in fact bears a suspicious resemblance to many, at the time, pre-existing Japanese folklore and stories. For example, there was a well-known folk story that presented the origins of the Kawano family in the Ayo district. In the story, a long time ago, a fisherman living on Gogono Island was working at sea when he saw a hollow boat on the sea and towed it home. He found a girl whose age was 12 or 13 inside the boat. She told him she was a daughter of a king in China, but she was forced out of her homeland because of some scandal. The fisherman brought her up as his own, and she later became a princess of a king in Ayo and gave birth to the beginning of the Kawano family. Another story exists in a traditional song of Kyushu Island, telling of a daughter of a nobleman who was sent out to sea in a hollow wooden boat with glass windows because of some scandal. She ate a delicious cake in the boat, but was eventually forced away. All elements
Sounds
of the
exactly like
1803
that.
Hollow Ship story can be seen in these much older ones, a princess escaping her homeland in a hollow wooden boat. Alien visitations must have been a dime a dozen in Japan for thousands of years, I guess. Conclusion. The 1803 story of the Utsuro Bune is likely a fake, a remix or reboot of a well-known legend in Japan, adapted for a more modern audience. The princess was changed from Chinese to a nondescript and largely inaccurate portrayal of a quote-unquote Western woman, and instead of
To make
being
it even
accepted
more
by the people of
unique.
Japan, she is rejected and sent on her way. The story serves as a cautionary tale for the pro-isolationist, xenophobic society of the Edo period. Do not fall into the lure of the world beyond Japan. The borders must stay closed, at all costs. In a way, the story is about aliens, just not the type ancient aliens believe in. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Magic ways, my friend. Hello there guys, and welcome to another installment of Trey the Explainer. The way human history is often taught in classrooms nowadays can seem kind of boring, in my opinion. Centuries of history are boiled down to socio-economic trends and major cultural shifts. Don't get me wrong, this perspective is important, but I think it removes the humanity of history. Past peoples become these shapeless and faceless blobs that we never really get to meet or understand.
Yeah,
They
there were
lack
people
any
too.
kind of agency or individuality. Modern audiences can walk away with the idea that people in the past were simple, brutish, and
but
far too
not.
different to be like us. But that's not what it was like at all. History was built on the lives of millions of individual people. Not just Julius Caesar, but Caesar's cobbler, Caesar's cook, the orphaned child who watched him ride by from a back alley in Rome, the Chinese rice farmer thousands of miles away who lived at the exact same time but would never hear the general's name, someone's favorite grandma weaving baskets on the other side of the globe. All their lives were emotional, complicated, messy, and at times very beautiful. Humans, as far as we can tell, have always been, well, human. Every single one of them had that spark of humanity. They lived, they grew up, they loved, they hated, they told the truth, they lied, they could be cruel, they could be goofy and dorky, and above all else, they dreamed. Every time I see a human skull, and I do this quite a bit, I often wonder what types of dreams once swirled around within it. Believe me, humans have not changed much over several thousand years. I think that nothing illustrates this fact better than when you look at ancient graffiti in ancient cities like Pompeii. What archaeologists find is not the refined speech of playwrights or historians, but the common everyday gossip of the small folk, the countless nameless people that never get so much as a mention in the historical accounts. They offer a rare glance into the entirely ordinary and mundane life of the average person, filled with incredibly endearing dirty jokes that are somehow still relatable to a person reading them 2,000 years removed. In Pompeii, for example, you'll find quotes like this: "Weep, girls, my penis has given you up. Now it penetrates men's behinds. Implicatus, I know that Icarus is buggering you. Heh, I screwed a lot of girls here. Cruella Lagos, why do you not love me?" Okay, these ones are pretty cute. If anyone does not believe in Venus, they should gaze at my girlfriend. "Hectus, baby, Mercator says hello." And of course, who could forget the famous, "We two dear men, friends forever, we were here. If you want to know our names, they were Gaius and Alus." Can we just take a moment to appreciate the fact that these two bros felt the need to eternalize their best broness forever? Oh, find yourself a person like that.
That's like
These are all
BFF in a tree.
translated quotes that totally wouldn't be out of place on a
But
modern
so
day
much
social
older.
media platform if we just changed the name.
There it is. There it is. Bottom right. Bottom right. There's a dick. I told you. Oh, my face is covering it. Hold on. Hold on. I'll move my webcam. There it is. There it is. I told you. I knew it. There's always a dick somewhere
Into a little bit.
in ancient graffiti.
Atop the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, runic inscriptions were discovered on a marble parapet. The inscription was 1,100 years old, and it was initially suspected that it served some kind of sacred religious importance. But a subsequent translation revealed that the writing reads as "Halfdan carved these runes," or simply "Halfdan was here." Historians determine that the engraving was made by a Viking named Halfdan, who was hired as a guard. Apparently, he grew tired of his guarding duties and decided to write his name on a nearby stone, only for us to rediscover centuries later. I don't think this will be a surprise at all, but this
Kilroy
type
was here,
of
yeah.
"I was here" graffiti is pretty much universal to all humans. The tomb of Ramses VI has a complaint on its walls written in ancient Greek, angrily proclaiming, "I visited, and I did not like anything except the sarcophagus. Behold, the oldest Yelp review in history. Oh God, forgive the one who wrote this writing." This is an inscription that I wrote with my own hand. My hand will wear out, but the inscription will remain. I guess that aged really well.
That's deep.
I could really go on and on talking about these examples forever, but there's one that really resonates with me in particular. Nestled along the shores of the river Volkhov, the city of Novgorod the Great, proudly stands as one of Russia's oldest cities. It is believed that Novgorod was initially founded sometime prior to the 800s AD to facilitate trade between the Greeks to the far south and the Varangians or Vikings to the far north. By the Middle Ages, the city's strategic position along this trade route allowed it to grow rich, both in wealth and in culture. In the 1950s, archaeological excavations of Novgorod discovered a treasure trove unlike any other. Not of gold or silver, but of documents. The thick and waterlogged clay soil had preserved tens of thousands of thin birch tree bark sheets. Prior to the mass production of paper, birchwood bark provided people, in antiquity, a cheap and easy alternative. wherever such trees were in ample supply. Novgorod was one such place. Using a metal or bone stylus, Novgorodians could inscribe letters and words into the abundant tree bark to record details of their everyday life. Over time, these documents created a lot of clutter, and eventually people would need to dispose of old and unwanted notes and rough drafts. This is exactly what occurred with the Novgorod treasure trove. Just like us, medieval Novgorodians during the 11th to 15th centuries threw away their useless bits of paper in a dump, not giving them as much as a second thought, and never knowing that scientists centuries later would marvel at their old garbage. Just like the graffiti at Pompeii, these amazingly preserved birch documents offer an unprecedented level of insight into the daily lives of medieval people. For one thing, they illustrate that a surprisingly high portion of the population appears to have been literate, at a time where having the ability to read and write was still pretty rare. Most of these documents were ledgers, monetary agreements, and transactions. However, others were personal letters. Several belonged to a female weaver named Nastasia. Sometime during the 1400s, her husband Boris asked her to send him his favorite set of shirts, which he evidently forgot to take with him on a lengthy journey. Rather sadly, we later learned that from another of Nastasia's letters, this time sent to her parents, that Boris has sadly died. We've got a love letter from Nikita to Yulanitsa. "Marry me, I want you, and you want me. Our witness will be Ignato." But probably most fascinating of them all, we've got, I kid you not, a child's homework of all things. Amongst the many thousands of birchwood bark manuscripts, 17 items, all dating to the 13th century, appear to have been from a single individual. On many of these documents, he signed his name in a very distinctive hand, Anfim or Anfim. Anfim was a Novgorodian boy, and judging from his handwriting, he was somewhere between the ages of 6 and 10 years old at the time. About 800 years ago, Anfim was writing out the old Novgorodian alphabet, practicing syllables, and learning verses of the Bible. His writings were almost definitely homework lessons and exercises given to him by his schoolteacher. However, Anfim didn't just write, he drew. 12 of the 17 pages contained illustrations, doodled in the corners and margins. Anfim sketched dozens of small characters, medieval stick figures of perhaps himself, his friends, and maybe even his teacher or parents. We can tell that Anfim had a very active imagination. He was obsessed with scenes of battles and knightly valor. On the page, simply numbered by archaeologist 200, he had apparently begun to write out the first 11 letters of the alphabet, only to get bored and doodle an image of a man riding atop a horse, thundering down and slaying a foe with a long lance. Anfim curiously wrote out his name next to the mounted figure. It is possible that this was intended to be a label, and Anfim was in fact envisioning himself as the heroic warrior, hinting at his dream of someday becoming a knight. On the back of another one of his assignments, Anfim drew a fantastical creature with a long horse-like neck, cat-like pointed ears, and a curly tail. Round its neck, Anfim writes, "I am the wild beast," again suggesting the doodle is an imaginary self-portrait of sorts. The beastly Anfim either has a long forked tongue or is spewing fire like a dragon. The text box or speech bubble next to it says, "Greetings from Anfim to Daniel," a message perhaps intended for one of the boy's friends. Page number 203 depicts a character fighting an eldritch abomination of some kind, possibly a person on fire or with long shaggy hair, or a priest clutching a poisonous snake. Even archaeologists aren't quite sure. Above the chaotic scene, the young boy writes, "Lord, help your servant Anfim." Although these sketches might have angered his instructor, they reveal a lot of endearing and adorable details about Anfim. I'm reminded of my own middle school doodles, the bizarre aliens and dinosaurs I conjured up from my imagination while daydreaming during a long and somewhat boring day of classes. Whatever happened to Anfim? We will probably never know. As far as we can tell, all we have of this artistic genius are a few scraps of paper and nothing more. After that, he disappears from the Birchwood records in our limited view of history. Did he become a brave knight as he dreamed? Did he ever grow up and get married? Did he finally master his understanding of the alphabet? The date of Anfim's writings are somewhat unclear, as the archaeological methods have a certain degree of error. Some studies suggest they were made around the 1220s to 1230s AD, while other sources suggest a couple decades later, in the 1260s. The funny thing is that depending on the date you favor, Anfa might have grown up to fight in one of the craziest battles in military history, the Battle on the Ice, where the Prince of Novgorod, Alexander Nevsky, and his army defeated the evil order of the Teutonic Knights. The battle was literally fought on top of a frozen lake. Anfa could have been in his late teens or early 20s around that time. Is it possible that he might have served as a squire, or maybe even a knight in the conflict? Maybe. It is also possible that he was born after it. Whatever the case, we will likely never know. It is doubtful that Anfa had any clue that his drawings would be viewed by thousands many centuries after his death, bringing his creations to life using magic. There might be 20,000 more of these birchwood texts still buried under the Russian clay. Maybe we have not seen the last of this creative young kid. Stories like Anfa's makes me feel a very oddly specific and hard to describe emotion. Sonderer. The realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. Every human that has existed on this planet had their own dreams and complex emotions. They were just like you and I, but most of them we will never get the chance to know. All the traces that ever were have disappeared, lost to us now. It is only through pieces of tree bark or scratches on the wall, a golden record, a handprint, that these stories have been preserved, passed down to us over the vastness. Ever since the remains of dinosaurs were properly described for the first time by paleontologists back in the 1800s, humans have claimed to have seen these great beasts not just as lifeless stone fossils, but in the flesh, alive and well, in the remote regions of the world. From a Ceratosaurus spotted in the Yukon Territory to plesiosaurs in Loch Ness, there has been no shortage of people claiming to have seen animals still living today, that all current scientific evidence indicates have been long dead for millions of years. As I have discussed in previous installments, the vast majority, if not all, of these late surviving cryptid sightings are more likely the product of misidentifications, hoaxes, and popular culture trends, rather than anything of substantial interest to paleontologists or biologists. As with most cryptids, these elusive monsters from another time leave no trace for their existence besides a few eyewitnesses. The Congo Basin in West Africa has, over the past century, become an epicenter of such purported creatures, and home to one of the most famous of them. To many Westerners, the remote interior of this hot and wet jungle region represents one of the final frontiers of our world. The massive Congo River drains out into the surrounding areas and feeds hundreds of smaller vassal rivers and streams. The dense and lush rainforests produced by these waterways, coupled with the political instability of the countries that encompass them, make proper documentation and exploration difficult for outsiders. Rare and elusive mammals like bonobos and okapi dwell in these regions, and it is claimed that countless other species are still yet to be discovered here, and no doubt there is some truth to this statement. But to hear some tell of it, dwelling in these murky swamps and rivers are some truly exceptional and bizarre creatures.
Dinosaurs, though. What
Living
the fuck?
dinosaurs. Foremost among them, the elephant-sized semi-aquatic Moncilium bimbe. Is there any truth to this claim? Well, you'll have to wait to find out, you impatient boyo, on this installment of Trade Explainer's Cryptid Profile, Moncilium bimbe, and the Lost Dinosaurs of the Congo.
Alright. I'm invested.
Some adherent believers claim that encounters with large, reptile-like monsters have long since been reported in Africa, even in ancient times. Some Greek and Roman historians mention the existence of dragons, griffins, giant ants, dog-faced men, and all kinds of living things living on the fringes of the known, civilized world, particularly south of Egypt. The Nile Mosaic of Palestrina is a Roman artwork dated to around 100 BCE in Italy, and depicts various scenes of people, places, and animals along the Great Nile River. Ethiopian warriors are shown fighting some more familiar African animals like crocodiles and hippos, but also less familiar ones like this Crocodilo pardalis, crocodile leopard. Ancient Egyptian artwork such as the Narmer Palet depicts two strange long-necked creatures apparently attempting to be tamed by humans. Cave artwork from Tanzania and Zambia supposedly shows sauropod-like creatures. However, the clearest and earliest documentation of actual sightings of dinosaur-like animals in Africa occurs in 1909, when German exotic animal dealer, showman, and big game hunter Carl Hagenbeck well known for providing P.T. Barnum's circus with its steady supply of lions and other animals, published a book called Beasts and Men, which recounted his many adventures throughout Africa. One excerpt goes as follows. Some years ago, I received reports of the existence of an immense and wholly unknown animal, said to inhabit the interior of Rhodesia. In the depths of the great swamps there dwelt a huge monster, half elephant, half dragon. It seems to me it can only be some kind of dinosaur,
Half dragon.
similarly akin to the Brontosaurus. The report was nothing more than a second or third-hand rumor Carl had allegedly heard from people he met on his travels in Rhodesia, modern-day Zimbabwe. Carl himself never claimed he actually saw such a creature. However, being a popular celebrity and an expert on foreign animals, many readers in the West took the claim made in his book very seriously, and at the time, no joke, it made headlines. The Washington Post reported, "Brontosaurus still lives." The Times of India reported, "Sea serpent
Media
of
hasn't
the
changed
forest."
much.
However, in Africa, the response to such claims was more skeptical. In 1919, the Uganda Herald responded to Carl's claim by saying, "There may be no truth whatsoever in the story, and probably there is not." The resident zoologist, employed by the Rhodesia Museum, who had actually traveled to the regions from which such stories of dinosaur-like creatures was said to originate from, openly scorned Carl's claim by stating, "It is curious that nothing has been heard of it before, through local native sources." Nonetheless, this initial report opened a floodgate of subsequent dinosaur sightings and legends all around Africa. German adventurer Paul Gretz wrote in 1911 that locals around Lake Bangwe-Yulu feared a large crocodile-like creature called the Nsanga, which was said to kill hippos. A degenerate saurian, which one might well confuse with the crocodile, were it not for its skin has no scales and its toes are armed with claws. In 1910, the Chicago Daily Tribune spoke to a Charles Brooks, who said he had talked to a tribe of pygmies in the Sahara Desert. These pygmies, according to Brooks, alleged to have seen great dinosaurs and giant humans living around giant oases in the middle of the desert itself. A Brontosaurus-like creature was allegedly spotted in the Orange River in South Africa in 1921. Now, it should be noted that none of these reports were anywhere near the Congo, and were pretty much made just all over Africa willy-nilly, often mentioned alongside tales of giant dog-sized spiders, hairy Bigfoot-like wild men, and Cyclops-like monsters.
Classics.
And it should be no surprise that many of these reports were admitted to be the product of hoaxing after the fact. Likely the actual first mention of a dinosaur-like cryptid living in the region near the Congo River Basin and the enigmatic Moncilium bembe was made only in the 1940s through science writer and early cryptozoologist Willy Ley, who published a book titled Exotic Zoology. Mentioned alongside the Yeti and sea serpents, Ley references an old neglected manuscript written in 1913 by a German officer named, Ludwig Ferrer von Stein zu Litzensitz? Look, I'm just going to call him Ludwig. Ludwig was stationed in a German colony in what is now Cameroon, and went on several expeditions to record the land's interior. It was there that he heard stories of something called Moncilium bembe. In Ley's 1941 book, he relays a translated version of Ludwig's descriptions. The animal is said to be a brownish-gray color with smooth skin. Its size is approximately that of an elephant. It is said to have a long and very flexible neck, and only one tooth, but a very long one. Some say it is a horn. A few spoke about a long, muscular tail like that of an alligator. Canoes coming near it are said to be doomed. The animal is said to attack the vessels at once.
Sounds like a
and kill
rhino.
the crews without eating the bodies. The creature is said to live in the caves that have been washed out by the river. It is said to climb the shores even at daytime in search of food. Its diet is said to be entirely vegetable. Now, this description, although short and coming at best from a third-hand source, received great public attention in the burgeoning cryptozoology community of the 1950s and 60s, and was oft repeated in other books. Independent explorer James H. Powell Jr., along with biologist and Loch Ness Monster enthusiast Roy Mackal, were intrigued with the Moncilium bembe story, and in 1980 they launched an expedition into the Republic of the Congo in an attempt to learn more about these reports and legends. In 1987, Mackal published his book, A Living Dinosaur, in Search of Moncilium bembe, recounting the two expeditions he embarked on to the Congo. Though Mackal never saw the creature, he supposedly collected many stories and folklore about it, and even eyewitness reports from the local peoples and isolated villages in the region. In Mackal's book, many different elusive beasts, not just the Moncilium bembe, were beginning to creep out of the murky swamps of the river. There was the one-horned Oh god, this is gonna be fun. Imula Natuku? Oh my god. Imala Net...
Come on now. It's a rhino.
Tauku, the plank-backed Mubilu, and the snake or lizard-like predatory Nagama Monene. Not just one, but an entire ecosystem of monsters all supposedly inhabiting the same area. Countless expeditions by other Western adventure seekers followed suit and continued pretty steadily until the 2010s. Between 1980 and 2000, almost 20 expeditions searched unsuccessfully to find Monkilium bembe, according to creationist William Gibbons, who participated in probably half of such visits. In 1992, a Japanese expedition supposedly recorded video evidence of a large and blurry shape swimming in Lake Tele. Other pieces of evidence on these trips have been recovered, such as footprints and sounds. Much hullabaloo, hula,
Hullabaloo.
Much hullabaloo. I legitimately cannot say this word.
Hullabaloo.
Much attention has been given to recorded interviews with locals, notably on the History Channel TV show Monster Quest. In such interviews, indigenous people are given a book filled with many images of different animals and a mock police lineup, and asked to identify which one was most like the Monkilium bembe. The recording showed many choosing reconstructions of dinosaurs over more familiar animals like rhinos and elephants. More recent expeditions in the 2010s have been less promising. A documentary crew in 2016 spoke to some villagers who claimed that the Monkilium bembe once existed, but is now extinct, the last members dying out at least a decade prior. A 2018 expedition, which brought a film crew and DNA scientists to Lake Tele, once again found no evidence of a dinosaur, but did discover an as of yet unknown species of green algae, so yay? As far as I'm aware, no further expeditions have been undertaken since. I think the website Genesis Park, I know, we'll get to this, was planning a 2020 expedition, but I've got a feeling that's been cancelled. Cracks in the story. Now, at first glance, all this evidence may lean strongly towards the idea that a large, sauropod-like dinosaur lives, or once lived, in the region around Lake Tele, and maybe even in other parts of Africa. However, I think when one puts on a more skeptical and scrupulous eye, many cracks start appearing in the Monkilium bembe's story, until it completely shatters. And there's literally so much to get to, I don't even know where to start. I think we can clearly see the development of a myth in the monster's vague and murky origins, because, well, for one thing, there really is no record of Monkilium bembe existing prior to the 20th century. Many of the ancient pre-colonial legends and artwork used by some to support the monster being older than the 1900s can easily be debunked. Some are obvious frauds of more recent invention, others are simply cases of mistaken identity. Those Zambian and Tanzanian cave drawings are very clearly supposed to be giraffes when you compare them with a larger sample size. Those long-necked monsters being restrained in Egyptian artwork are not dinosaurs, but serpoperds, an entirely imaginary combination of a leopard with the neck of a snake. Such mythical, chimeric monsters are popular in mythology, especially in Egypt. Just look at the Sphinx. It does not mean such creatures really existed. The Roman mosaic depicting a so-called crocodile leopard can hardly be held up as reliable testimony, considering it was probably constructed by somebody who had never even been to the locations they describe, explaining many of the other inaccuracies in the image. I find it more likely that this image describes a known animal on the Nile, that the Romans just did not have a name for perhaps, maybe a river otter. And to add, the animal doesn't look much like a dinosaur. Similar legends and stories of monsters in pre-colonial African folklore are pretty vague and do not sound much like dinosaurs when you really break them down. In truth, the earliest reports of dinosaur-esque creatures alive in Africa's interior begin with Carl Hagenbeck's 1909 book reporting rumors of sauropods in Rhodesia. Though Carl claims these legends are old, this is highly doubtful. Westerners at the time who visited the very region Carl cites report no such rumors. And considering he was hearing these rumors at best second or third hand,
but hey, whatever. never good for you. You'll know that they just keep getting weirder and weirder, and this tier is no exception. It's also really fun researching this stuff because as I get deeper and deeper into it, boy am I excited.
These are nonsense. Where the hell is the real one? I think this is the right one. Yeah. Yeah, we know this shit. Hmm. Huh. Well, I don't know. It's a short stream. I'm gonna go. I'm pretty beat, anyways. Away.